Long nights, missed dinners, endless overtime. I thought I was proving my love. She said I was choosing career over us. When it all broke, one truth held me together. You ever meet someone and feel like, for a brief moment, the world stops spinning just to give you a chance? That was her, Alyssa. We met on a chilly Tuesday night in November, the kind of evening where the air smells like rain and wood smoke, and you can see your breath if you laugh hard enough. I was working part-time at a grocery store, doing night shifts while trying to fix up my uncle's old trailer out near Route 27. She was checking out with a single frozen pizza, a six-pack, and one of those bad romance novels they sell near the front. She joked that it was her divorce dinner. Turned out she was not joking. Her husband had left a note, changed his number, and vanished like some ghost out of a bad country song. I helped her carry the bags to her car, more out of instinct than anything. She thanked me, smiled once, and drove off. I figured that was that. But then she came back the next night, and the next, and suddenly, it was not just groceries. She would hang around by the deli counter pretending to look at cheese she was never going to buy, waiting until my shift ended so we could sit out on the curb and talk about nothing. Sometimes she brought coffee. Other nights, she brought old photos of her childhood dog or told stories about growing up in the Carolinas. She was warm, unfiltered, that kind of person who made you feel like you mattered, even if you had not done anything worth remembering. We started spending weekends together. It was simple. Cheap coffee, thrift stores, walking aimlessly through quiet neighborhoods neither of us could afford to live in. But we made plans, man. Real ones. Talked about getting a house somewhere up north where the snow still fell heavy and the people left their doors unlocked. She used to say, "All I want is peace. And a porch swing." And I believed her. I believed in us. Maybe that is why I went all in. I told her I was going to fix things, get out of the trailer, get a real job, make enough so she could finally breathe easy. That was the promise. I just did not realize what that promise was going to cost me. Because while I was out there trying to build something solid, something permanent, she was slowly deciding I was never really there at all. I started picking up extra shifts before the new year even hit. The plan was simple. Work hard now, so we could relax later. That meant double shifts, overnight hauls, even a few side gigs I never told her about, like delivering building supplies for some guy off Craigslist who paid in cash. It was not glamorous. I was not clocking in at some fancy desk job. I was lifting pallets, driving busted trucks through sleet, patching roofs in the rain. My hands cracked open so many times that winter I could barely close them without bleeding. But I kept showing up. Every damn day. I figured if I could stack enough, maybe we could move into a real place by the spring. Something with actual heat, maybe even a fenced-in yard. A place where she could hang plants in the kitchen window and not have to hear raccoons fighting outside the bedroom at 2 in the morning. I missed a few dinners. A couple of date nights too. Not because I forgot. I just could not afford to stop. I remember one night in particular. I had been working a loading dock until close to midnight. Came home sore, soaked through, and starving. Found her curled up on the couch, arms crossed, eyes locked on some mindless TV show she was not even watching. She did not say hi, did not look up, just muttered something like, "Nice of you to show up." I stood there in the doorway, unsure if I should laugh or apologize. I ended up doing both. She did not smile. I told her I was trying, that it was all for us. She gave a half shrug and said, "Maybe you should try being here once in a while instead of always out there." That stung more than I expected, because in my mind, I was here. I was fighting for us. Every nail I hammered, every hour I stayed late, every sore muscle and sleepless night. It was all so she would never have to carry the kind of weight I had carried growing up. But she could not see that. Or maybe she could, and it just was not enough. The cracks started small. Missed calls, cold dinners, shorter replies. Still, I kept telling myself it was just a phase. That love meant sacrifice. That someday, she would look back and understand why I did it this way. But looking back now, maybe I should have paid closer attention to those silences. Because something was shifting, and it was not just the hours. It was her. By March, I had saved up almost enough for a down payment on a small fixer-upper just outside of town. It was not much, one of those old houses with peeling paint and a crooked porch, but it had good bones. I remember driving by it on my way home from work, imagining us there. Her with a mug of coffee on the porch. Me, maybe finally sleeping a full night without worrying about rent. I never told her I had been looking at houses. I wanted it to be a surprise. Something solid I could hand her, like, here. This is our start. But by then, she had already started pulling away. She stopped leaving the porch light on when I worked late. Her voice changed, too. Less warmth, more questions wrapped in sarcasm. Who are you working for? Us, or yourself? That one hit hard. I wanted to snap back. Instead, I just said something dumb like, I am doing this for both of us. She rolled her eyes, told me I was always chasing some invisible future, said I was obsessed with stability. I wanted to scream. Of course I was obsessed. You know what it is like to grow up watching your lights get shut off because your old man spent the electric bill at the bar? To eat saltines for dinner because mom said she would get paid next week but never did? I told myself I would never bring someone into a life like that. That Alyssa would never have to worry about bouncing checks or landlords banging on the door at midnight. But I guess all she saw was someone too busy to show up. It was not like I wanted to miss things. I would get home and find out she had a rough day and just needed me to listen. Or she had made dinner and waited until it got cold. And every time I said, sorry, I was working, it just made things worse. One night I came home and she had already gone to bed. No note, no text, just silence. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the smell of reheated lasagna still hanging in the air. And for the first time, I started to wonder, was I building a future or burying the present? Because all I had ever wanted was to build her a life she would never want to leave. But what if all she ever wanted was for me to just sit down and be there? By April, the tension was no longer just under the surface. It was everywhere, woven into the way she sighed when I walked through the door late, folded into the quiet clink of her fork at dinner, wrapped around every question that did not sound like a question. You missed my sister's birthday, she said once, standing by the sink with her arms crossed. I told her I had texted, that I was working, that I could not just walk off a shift and keep our lights on. She said, you always have a reason. And maybe I did, but they were not excuses. They were the bills in the drawer, the groceries in the fridge, the savings account with both our names on it. The thing is, she started keeping track, not of money, but of absence. Missed dinners, late nights, the weekends I promised we would go out, but ended up dead on the couch, boots still on, smelling like drywall and sweat. She said she felt like she was dating a ghost. Said I had become a stranger who just happened to sleep next to her. And I did not know how to fix it. Because how do you explain to someone that every ounce of your exhaustion is soaked in love? That the reason your back is breaking is because you are trying to carry the both of you across the finish line? One Sunday, she brought up counseling. Said maybe we needed someone to help translate each other. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the idea of sitting in a room and paying someone to tell me to be more present felt ridiculous when I was barely sleeping 4 hours a night. She did not take that well. That night, she slept on the couch. And when I saw her curled up there, wrapped in that old blue blanket we picked out together at a flea market years ago, something cracked. Not in anger, but in fear. Because I realized I might have been building a house she no longer wanted to live in. And worse, I had no idea how to stop it. The next morning, she asked me if I even saw a future with her anymore. I told her that was all I saw. But she just shook her head and whispered, then why do I feel like I am not part of it? I wish I could say we had some big screaming match that cleared the air. That all the resentment boiled over and gave us a shot at honesty. But it was never like that. We fought quietly. Passive-aggressive comments, tired glances, long silences where the only thing louder than our breathing was what we were both trying not to say. One night, I came home early. Figured I would surprise her. Brought takeout from that Thai place she used to love. Even remembered to ask for extra peanut sauce. She was in the living room with her laptop open, candles lit, and music playing low. For a second, it felt like we were us again. I asked if she wanted to eat. She barely looked up, said she had already eaten. I set the food down anyway, still trying to make it work. I told her I had been thinking about cutting back hours. Maybe not chasing every overtime shift. Maybe slowing down, just a little. She nodded, but then she said it. You only say that now that I have one foot out the door. I did not even know how to respond. My throat went dry. She closed her laptop, stood up, and just said, I feel like I am in a relationship with someone who only loves me in theory. That hit harder than I expected, because she was not wrong. Not completely. I had been loving her the only way I knew how. Through action. Through showing up to work every day, through budgeting and fixing and building toward a future she could feel safe in. But maybe she needed more than that. Maybe she needed me to sit on the floor with her and eat cheap noodles while watching trash TV. Maybe she needed me to ask how her day was and actually listen without my mind jumping to numbers or deadlines or drywall. And maybe I had forgotten how. I stood there in the middle of that room, takeout getting cold on the table, and I wanted to say something that would pull her back. But all I could say was, I thought I was doing the right thing. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. She was already halfway gone. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how the biggest moments in your life never happen on dramatic days. Not Christmas, not your anniversary, just a random weekday where the sun comes up like it always does and the coffee tastes the same. I came home early again. This time, the living room was spotless. No blanket on the couch, no shoes by the door, no soft music humming from her phone, just silence. At first, I thought maybe she went out. Grocery run, coffee shop, something simple. But then I walked into the bedroom. Her dresser drawers were half open. Empty hangers rattled against each other in the closet. The bathroom shelf was missing her toothbrush. And just like that, without yelling, without a slammed door, without a single warning, she was gone. There was a note. Of course there was a note. Folded in half and placed right on top of the peanut sauce container from the night before. She wrote that she needed something different. That she could not keep being second place to a dream she never asked for. That I was a good man, but not her man anymore. She said she hoped I would understand one day. I stood there with that piece of paper in my hand, reading it over and over, waiting for the part where she said she would come back. It never came. I do not even remember sitting down. But suddenly I was on the floor, leaning against the fridge, that cold towel pressing into my spine. You think you will cry in a moment like that. But I didn't. Not at first. I just sat there, staring at nothing, like someone had shut off the world. I had built a future for us brick by brick. Scraped together every penny, stayed up every night thinking about what would make her feel safe. And she walked out while the paint was still drying. And the worst part? I could not even blame her. Because maybe I had built her a house, but I forgot to make it feel like a home. The days that followed felt like slow motion. Her scent still lingered in the pillows. Half her shampoo bottle was still in the shower. There were hair ties on the bathroom sink, one of her old sweaters on the back of the chair. It was like she had vanished mid-sentence and left all the punctuation behind. I kept waiting for a message. A knock on the door. Some sign that this was temporary. That she just needed a break. Nothing came. The weirdest part was, I still went to work. Still showed up to that same construction site every morning, hands raw, boots heavy with mud. Nobody there asked questions. They just noticed I had stopped talking. That Friday, I came home to find the mortgage paperwork in the mailbox. Approved. We got the loan. The house was ours. Except there was no we anymore. Just me. I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in my hand, flipping it over and over. The place I had dreamed about, the porch, the yard, the swing she always talked about, it was real now. It was mine. But it felt hollow. Like building a boat and realizing halfway through that you were the only one who ever intended to sail. My friends started reaching out. A couple of them offered beers, advice, even bad jokes to lighten the mood. But how do you explain this kind of loss to people who think breakups are just Tinder resets and rebound weekends? I did not want to rebound. I wanted to rewind. And the worst part was, I started doubting myself. Did I choose the job over her? Did I sacrifice love for a future that only existed in my own head? Was I wrong to believe that providing was enough? At night, I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering how she used to curl into me just before falling asleep. How she would mumble things I could barely hear, but I always understood. Now the bed felt too big. The silence, too sharp. But I was not angry. Not at her. I was angry at how easy it had been for love to slip through our fingers while we both thought we were holding on. And I was starting to wonder, if love needs more than just good intentions, what else had I failed to give? It was 2 weeks later when I finally broke down and called her sister. I was not looking to beg. I just needed answers, something more than a folded piece of paper and silence. Her sister answered on the second ring. No small talk, no fake sympathy. Just said, I was wondering when you would call. I asked where Alyssa was. She said she was staying with an old friend. Said she needed time, space, a life that felt like hers again. And then she added something that stopped me cold. She felt like she was disappearing next to you. I asked what that meant. Her sister sighed. Told me Alyssa had spent the last few months wondering if she was just a passenger in a life someone else was driving. Said she used to talk about how proud she was of me, how hard I worked, how much I gave. But somewhere along the line, that pride turned into distance. She said she did not know how to ask you to choose her without feeling selfish. That hit me hard, because I never thought I had to choose. I thought the love was in the doing, in the working, in the building. But maybe she needed more than a roof and a retirement plan. Maybe she needed a partner, not a provider. And maybe, just maybe, I had become so obsessed with making sure she would never go without, that I forgot to make sure she never wanted to leave. I hung up without asking to speak to Alyssa. What was I going to say? That I was sorry? That I would change? That I finally understood what she had been trying to tell me in all those sighs, all those silences, all those quiet dinners where she stared out the window like she was already halfway gone. Maybe I would have said all that, but it was too late. She had already packed up the pieces I never knew were breaking, and I was left standing in a life I had built for two alone. I moved into the house anyway, the one I had picked out for us. It felt like a joke at first, carrying boxes through a door that was supposed to be held open by her hand, setting up a living room where her laughter was supposed to echo, hanging shelves she had picked out in some random online cart that I never got around to ordering until it was just me. But I did it, piece by piece, not because I was still holding on to hope she would come back, but because I needed to prove to myself that all of this, that everything I sacrificed, was not just for nothing. There is a kind of quiet that hits you when you sit alone in a house you built for someone else. It is not grief, exactly. Not anger either. It is something slower, heavier. Like waiting for a train you know is never coming. I kept working. Same shifts. Same boots. Same routine. But something had changed. I stopped checking my phone at lunch. Stopped replaying her words in my head. Stopped hoping the door would open and she would be standing there with tears in her eyes, saying she was wrong. Because that moment never came. And the longer I waited for it, the more I realized something brutal. She had not left because I was a bad man. She left because she wanted something I never even knew was missing. That was the twist in all of this. It was never about choosing between love and work. It was about seeing each other clearly. About respect. About presence. And maybe she had stopped seeing me. Or maybe I had stopped letting her be seen. But when the dust finally settled, I looked around that quiet house, surrounded by the walls I built with my own two hands, and I was still standing. Heart cracked, but spine straight. And somehow, that mattered. It took a long time, but eventually the ache stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like a scar. Something dull, something you only notice when the light hits it a certain way. I stopped asking what I did wrong. I started asking what I learned. Because here is the truth nobody wants to admit. Sometimes love does not fail because of cruelty. Sometimes it fails in the quiet, in the missed moments, in the gap between two people who never stopped loving each other, but forgot how to show it in a way that made sense. I used to think work was the enemy, that if I had just taken one less shift, one less job, we would still be together. But that was not it. It was not the job that ruined us. It was the lack of us in the equation. No shared rhythm, no understanding, no effort to meet in the middle. She saw me chasing a future. I saw myself protecting one. But somewhere between those two truths, we lost the only thing that ever mattered. Each other. And still, I do not hate her. I hope she finds what she is looking for. I hope she wakes up one morning and feels whole in a way she never did with me. I really do. As for me, I have got this house. It creaks when the wind blows and the water heater makes a sound like it is sighing every time I turn on the tap. But it is mine. I made it with my own two hands. And maybe that is enough for now. Because even though I lost her, I did not lose myself. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like something worth standing on.